Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. The results of the 2023 Virginia elections are in, and Democrats are in the majority in both chambers of the General Assembly. So now, what happens to Governor Glenn Youngkin's conservative agenda? What are the implications for reproductive legislation going forward? And is this election outcome a harbinger of what's to come in 2024? Our Another View Roundtable is here. Daun Hester, Gaylene Kanoyton, and Dr. Eric Claville. A deep dive into the 2023 elections. That's next on Another View, right after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. I want to start today's show by telling you a fabulous, wonderful, heart-rending story that's happening in Carrollton, Virginia. Now, Shamir Wells, she is an entrepreneur, and she's a breast cancer survivor. And she has a coffee shop in Carrollton called 54 Beans. Now, when Shamir was going through her treatments and so forth, she wound up falling behind on the rent, and the landlord locked her out of her shop. So her coffee bean shop has been closed for a little while. But the entire community of Carrollton came together. They raised $20,000 to get the shop reopened, and there's a grand opening this Sunday, or a grand reopening, as they say, this Sunday, November the 12th at 10:45 a.m. And they sent me this wonderful information about what was happening in that community. They encourage everyone to come out to help celebrate this reopening. This is a staple within the Carrollton community, and we just want to wish Shamir Wells and everyone involved with 54 Beans to the very best in what is happening, and to thank the community for coming together, because when we come together, there is power. Absolutely, there is power. And I also want to say to Jamila Shipman, who is one of her friends and who spearheaded a lot of this organization in terms of bringing in the funds. It is wonderful when you have friends who care. So I thought it was just a really, really nice story. So going out to 13478 Carrollton Boulevard in Carrollton, Virginia. That is this Sunday, November the 12th at 10:45. I know there are going to be lots of tears and lots of hugs. So there you go. And there were lots of tears and lots of hugs on Tuesday as the 2023 Virginia elections were happening. And the power has now shifted in Richmond. So what's to come? Well, our Another View Roundtable is here, and they've got some thoughts. Let's meet our Another View Roundtable pundits. Daun Hester is the treasurer of the city of Norfolk. Hey, Daun, how you doing?
Hello, everyone.
Good. Gaylene Kanoyton is a political advisor and president of the Hampton NAACP.
Hey, ready to get rolling. Ready to get rolling.
Pull that up for you.
Rolling.
There you go. And Dr. Eric Claville, he's a political and legal analyst. Hello there.
Hello, Barbara. Good to be back.
It is always good to have you. So, Eric, last month you were on the show, and you said that the Democrats were going to take over the House and the Senate.
Yes.
And here we go.
Yeah. Well, the voters voted. It's very easy to call it when you see the numbers. I mean, look at all the factors and come to a reasonable conclusion. But I will say, first of all, congratulations to the Democratic Party. Congratulations to the House. Also the future leadership, which we'll talk about very soon. Mm-hmm. But I will say as well, there's a caveat to that win, is that I think the Dems have to be cautiously optimistic moving forward, because, again, we'll talk about the ability to pass bills both in the House and the Senate, mm-hmm. and what the veto process is, and then the process of overriding that veto from the executive house. But also, we'll look at the numbers come next week. I have the opportunity to moderate for the second year in a row the premier election talkback with VPAP that's going to happen here in Hampton Roads. And we'll look at the numbers. I said on yesterday.
VPAP?
Yes, Virginia Public Access Project. So that's VPAP.org. All public information, they can consolidate it into this wonderful search engine. It's phenomenal. So if you're listening to this show, be a part of WHRO.org, VPAP.org, go to it hand in hand. But when you look at those numbers, I said that when you look at the machine, the Youngkin machine, and we'll talk about whether his brand was tarnished or not with this, and where does he go from here in the Republican Party. But that get out the vote machine that he had going on, being the face of the Republican Party here in the Commonwealth, and I believe the future face of the Republican Party nationally moving forward, Republicans overperform or outperform Democrats in a lot of key districts as far as voting. I think that was in large part because of voter apathy. I think the Democrats had a very effective but narrow message on the women's right to choose and abortion. Outside of that, there really wasn't another issue to galvanize voters to get out and vote. So moving forward, the question is what happens from there, 2024, 2025, and the presidential and the gubernatorial election, and also 2026 when we look at the next U.S. Senate seat coming up and also the congressional seats coming up. So again, I'll say congratulations, but when you look at those numbers, look at the districts. Also, there wasn't a lot of competitive races out there, right? So be cautiously optimistic, but enjoy it. And when you have power, use it. Wisely and often, because you never know where you're going to get it again. And because as I stated, on all the shows this week, Hampton Roads is the epicenter of political power for the next half decade.
Gaylene, you were right in the middle. You were in Richmond that night. Can you give us a sense of what was going on? And, in the beginning, you said that you guys were cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic. And didn't know which way it was going to go. I felt like the Senate was going to, be fine in terms of having a majority. But I was concerned about the House. But then it just started rolling. The numbers start rolling in. And it was a great night. It was a great night because democracy won. That's why it was a great night. Democracy won. And even though, the Republicans lost, I want to see some Republicans like back in the day, when you could work together, they can have dialogue and conversations. And until we get to that point, it's going to be the way it is right now. One thing I want to say this is Governor Youngkin, he got all his people out to vote early. He got religion all of a sudden after we had 21 bills that was against early vote in the last general session, assembly session. 21 bills. He got religion. Tell me, come on out. We're going to lose our freedom.
Barbara, Gaylene's right. The Republicans fought tooth and nail against early voting. But a piece was published in the Washington Post, I want to say maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, where early voting to say, hey, this is where you win elections. And you saw the push, the galvanizing around getting voters out to the poll early and also, early so that you can vote and get out that vote. But that's the way to win elections. Early voting, engaging your constituencies, and making sure that they can cast their vote in the way that's best for them. And Gaylene is right. Democracy did win because we saw individuals opening up access. Well, not individuals, but the state opened up access to voting, which is good. More people engaged, the better we are. And as we move forward, this is going to make good. I mean, we do have a Democratic-controlled General Assembly, but we have a executive house and offices controlled by the Republicans. So this really is going to make good for good politics, good public policy, and good common sense solutions.
Daun, you've been on the side where you were sitting there waiting for the results.
Just like so Tuesday night.
Yes.
It will make for more balanced politics. and legislation that will come out. But let me just say, early voting, all of us need to do a better job, because early voting came under Democratic leadership. And it was talk of taking it away, but we were able to stop it. The reason we have early voting is for people to have the ability to go when they have time, on their time, make decisions. You go and you vote early. And some people, we still have individuals, and this is a thing, who like to wait for election day. So and that's okay. But one of the things I want to share is that when you go vote, for those of us who are in a campaign, managing a campaign, we look at that to help us determine, assess what doors we need to knock on, who we need to see, or who we need to call. So I want people to understand that there's a reason that early voting is so important for us, and what it provides for candidates like me and others to be able to assess what we have to do to get people out to vote. Numbers were low. They've always been low. And, when I look at some of our counties and smaller areas and see, where 300 people picked a school board member, I'm going, that's not good. And so I hope that we will begin to continue to work hard to help people understand why voting is so important.
But shout out to the college students.
Yeah, they showed up.
The college students showed up.
Yes,
they
did.
registered and they voted right on the spot. I think William and Mary had something like 700 and some students that turned out to vote up there. But I'm just saying that that same day register, which came under Democratic leadership, and Sunday vote came under Democratic leadership in the localities, which we're going to be fighting for to make sure that that's mandatory. That early vote, same day register and vote was very big too.
Yes.
So I know that the NAACP for Virginia was very involved in asking Governor Youngkin to talk about why or what were the criteria for those who were having their rights restored. And it took a long time for the information to come back. Can you talk a little bit about that and what's happening with that?
So back
Gaylene?
in May, we did a FOIA in our National General Counsel, and we have 3 sets of lawyers that are representing us. We did a FOIA and to ask what was the process. We never got an answer. So litigation was filed 2 weeks ago on a Friday, and this past Friday was the court date. Well, on Thursday night, all the documents finally came in from the governor's office. And those documents were heart-wrenching to see that, to see that there's no process. You had 1,000 applications that weren't even processed yet. It's just really, so we have 3 demands. We want to know what the process is, timeline, all of this, and we go back to court on November the 15th.
Oh, okay.
So it's not over. And then you got the 3,400, that was dropped off, and then he claims that they were put back in, but that's something else that's got to be followed up on as well.
So were there any problems with voting machines, people having access to voting, anything?
But voting machines went down in Newport News, but that was a vendor issue. And also it went out in some other areas and went down, but people should have been issued a paper poll ballot. And some were issued provisional ballots. And I know that some of our NAACP lawyers, we called one in Chesterfield that went down, and she said, well, we're supposed to give them a provisional ballot. Well, no. We said, our lawyer said, well, we need to go to court then or something. And so she finally said, okay, we're going to count the provisional ballots as paper poll ballots. She finally called back and said that. But lawyers and the legal system on voter protection didn't start just now. We started like last year. And so it was very strong throughout this year. And every time something looked like it was wrong, it was always people on top of it to whether get answers for you or whatever the case might be.
Okay. Joining us is Carol Pretlow, the political science professor from Norfolk State University. Glad to see you, Carol.
Thanks
so much for being
sorry
here.
for the delay.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you guys, Eric, I'm going to start with you on this one. So Governor Youngkin has to now work with two Democrats in the House and in the Senate. What happens with his agenda? How is that going to work?
Well,
do you think?
well, his agenda goes nowhere.
Right.
The governor is very adamant. The most power any executive officer has is the first 18 months that they're in office. That's the most power you have because you're newly elected. You've got the momentum. You've got the legislative momentum. You got the bully pulpit, and there's not an election for another 2 years. Or really, you start 18 months after that when campaigning ramps up. Right, the next 6 months. So for the most part, his agenda is stalled. What he can do at this point is really kind of rehabilitate the conservative agenda that he has on a national level. He's pretty much done here. Now, I also keep in mind that he does have the power of the veto here in the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
And with the veto, of course, a bill becomes law if the governor signs it. If not, he can veto it and then send back his suggestions back to the General Assembly or back to the House. The House can vote on it, and they can put those in or not, and it just kind of goes back and forth. Or they can override the veto in both houses by 2/3 vote. Now, again, because of the margin that in both houses by the Democrats, they don't have that luxury of overriding the veto by 2/3. It's not going to be there. So now you're going to see a back and forth, as we talked about previously. You're going to see that ability to have good compromise for common sense solutions. However, what we saw last legislative session, we just got a budget. That was signed. So we say it's an opportunity. It is an opportunity for good common sense solutions and compromise, but we know it's going to be very contentious because 2024, the day after the election, November 8th, which was yesterday, right? I'm getting my days mixed up, right? Which was yesterday, started day one for the presidency of the United States. So that election has started. It is officially on. It is a go. So I can see, both parties really holding out until after the election for the president or, right before anything of substance is really passed. Now you're going to get, policies and bills that pass that really are not going to make the headlines, right? We pass 5,000 bills are put in every year. We pass those easily, but it's just those small ones that are stump speech type of issues that we're going to see that's going to be stalled. One of them is really big for Democrats, both here in Virginia as a test case and nationally. That's women's right to choose and abortion. The Supreme Court.
So do you think that's going to carry through?
Absolutely.
Through to next year?
Absolutely. Now, the reason why I say that is because the Supreme Court just overturned Roe versus Wade, last summer. So now every state is voting, and they say, hey, give it to the states. It shouldn't be a national. Well, Ann Coulter wrote a piece. He said, well, yeah, the states have spoken. And they voted over and over again. This is a dead issue. And Republicans are what she called the defund the police GOP movement to ban abortion needs to stop because they're going to keep losing elections with this. So I think the Democrats can ride that into the White House, but there are other factors that could, pop up. We got some international issues. We got the economy, and we got age, things can happen. So, but yeah, that is the main issue that they're going to use to galvanize voters.
And so, go ahead, Carol.
Shouldn't ask a question, but Eric, I've been waiting to ask you this question. What do you think this is going to do to our governor's career plans? Because even New York Times and Washington Post had that he was counting on making this work, and then he was going to make his transition to running for president. And I don't think his career plans are looking real good.
Well, if I could.
My co-host.
I'm sorry.
Well, he's definitely not the mailman because he didn't deliver.
Yeah, because I want to make more money.
Well, just very quick, if I could. I mean, to your point, that plan is out the window. But in politics, we have very short memory. So, if I was advising him or anyone on Democratic side, I would say stay out of this 2024 race. This race is the nominees are decided. Stay out of it, and because it's just nothing but carnage and damage that you're going to get from this. But if I was advising him, I would say follow the Barack Obama model. Run for U.S. Senate 2026. Of course, we have Senator Warner who's coming up for election in 2024. We have Senator Kaine who's coming up for re-election. But follow that model, and then if he wins, run for president in 2028, or stay out of the U.S. Senate race, become the face, and rehabilitate yourself on the economy and other issues that you're good at. Of course, investment economy and so forth, and some international issues, and run for president in 2028. But I would follow the Barack Obama model.
Going forward. So one of the things that struck me during this whole election process, were the number of negative ads that were out, and particularly in several instances, and I guess the Clint Jenkins one is the most prominent, of portraying African American males as criminals. Dawn, speak to that. Did you? I mean, that it's a trope that hopefully will stop at some point.
Why do you think it's going to stop?
Because I'm eternally optimistic.
Okay, I want you to be optimistic, but when it comes to black men specifically, blacks in general, the negative is what the fear is. It goes all the way. It's always the fear factor that people are playing against when they do things like that. They did it with Clint, they did it with Nadarius, they did it with Michael, and they did it in up
Michael
north too. So it when that's what you know and that's the card that you play, and you think that it's going to frighten people away from voting for you, a specific person, then that's what people use. Not just black people use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing is that, the other thing is that they bought all the Google. They did Google Analytics really well. So if you Google any candidate that was a Democrat, the first thing would come up is he's too extreme, and then they had why. I mean, they really had a. They were really doing things on YouTube and out of sight that we didn't see. They were working behind the scenes as well too.
But on the other hand, we also now will have a lot of firsts within the General Assembly in terms of minorities, right? Carol, do you know some of them? We'll talk about some of them.
I don't know of them specifically, but I agree with your statement, because I have seen students have come to my office who were at first not really committed, and now they are really interested. What does this mean for us, and how do we get involved more in the election process? And this is the first time that I've had them actually. Usually I have to twist their arms and say, okay, extra credit here if you do. No, they are now asking, and even in my American government class, the one that I just left, part of my delay was because I was answering all these questions about what do we do right now? How do we start this process right now?
And what did you tell them?
I told them, well, they had managed the first leg of the journey, which was getting the knowledge and then voting, and then looking at how each of their representatives votes on the congressional level. Don't worry about the top yet. Let's do the congressional level here in the state and follow up with what we expect from our representatives, because it's very likely that people will come to our classes to talk, and then we're out of sight, out of mind. But I told them, when somebody visits your class, write them the thank you note, and then say, would you address this issue, or what can we do on this issue? So there's a whole strategy associated with
Gaylene, there's some leadership changes that will be coming that will involve African Americans in particular, but also other minorities.
Right.
Such
So
as?
in the Senate Democratic caucus leader, Senator Mamie Locke, has the opportunity to become the first black and woman Senate Majority Leader, and that's huge. And the Senate will have to vote on that. Also, you have Senator Louise Lucas, who's already President Pro Tem and still President Pro Tem. She is now the chair of Finance and Appropriations, which is a powerful committee. And then you have Delegate Don Scott, who was the
Hampton Roads all over this.
who was a House Minority Leader, and he has the opportunity now to be voted on to be the Speaker of the House. First, that's right.
African American.
First African American
Ever.
Speaker. I think all of them are. Pro Tem, President
All
Pro
three
Tem.
of them are
All
first.
three of them are.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And it's all in Hampton Roads. And
Yes.
for, no matter what side of issues you're on, that is powerful for our region. And
Yes,
I want
but-
people to understand that the power that they have, the ability that they have, the knowledge that they're going to use to put in good legislation for all of Virginia rests with individuals who live among us.
That's
and
right.
That's important.
That's
and
really important.
It should be praised by everybody.
Also, Phil Hernandez is the youngest Latino ever elected to the House of Delegates, and Danica Roem, the first transgender state senator. I mean, my point being, Eric, the diversity within our legislative branches now is much more reflective of the diversity of our population.
Absolutely. One thing, there's an advantage to this having a large constituency and different individuals engaged in a party. But there's also a disadvantage that comes to it because you have to, make everybody happy. But one thing the Dems have been able to do is really expand their base and outreach, and reaching out to these individual groups and then galvanizing around whatever issues it is. But that one issue of democracy, right? One thing that the Republicans are really suffering from is the very opposite. They're dwindling in their numbers around certain issues. So there's that internal fight to expand that. But as I said before, Virginia is the litmus test. As Virginia votes, so does the rest of the country. As Virginia goes, during this election, we just didn't have candidates on the ballot, but we had representation on the ballot who we believe represents us or looks like us or can speak to our issues. We also had issues on the ballot, whether it be women's right to choose and abortion, whether it be healthcare, education, whether it be the economy, whether it be inflation, whatever the case may be. Those issues were on the ballot, and who the people believe, which party is best to lead in those areas. And they spoke and believe that the Democrats are best to lead in that area. And I believe that's going to translate to the national stage, where Republicans are also going to be really suffer a lot of losses in Congress. I mean, hey, for a month they couldn't decide who was going to be their leader. And then on top of that, I think the White House also goes in that direction as well. So I think you're going to see a Democratic wave, that pendulum swinging again in 2024, and moving forward. And then we'll see what happens in 2026, right?
If you're just joining us, we're talking about the outcome of this week's elections from an African American perspective with the Another View Roundtable. Norfolk City Treasurer Daun Hester, political advisor and president of the Hampton NAACP Gaylene Kanoyton, NSU political science professor Carol Pretlow, and political and legal analyst Dr. Eric Claville. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. What are you looking for in terms of new laws and legislation moving forward? 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So what was the most surprising thing that you guys saw on Tuesday night across the board? Not even just Virginia, but from elections all the way across. Did something jump out at you and you go, oh, wow?
Virginia Beach elected 3 legislators.
Black.
Black.
That's a first.
That's
That is
a
a
first. 3.
Wow.
All the legislators. That was huge.
Yeah.
For Virginia Beach. That's the way out for me. 3 black legislators in Virginia Beach.
You know, to Gaylene's point, I was speaking with someone yesterday, and I told them, I said, listen, when you look at Hampton Roads, talked about the epicenter of political power, but you also talk about representation. If you look at, again, Virginia Beach, of course, the way redistricting worked, the districts were drawn more in favor of Democrats, but also more favor of diversity as well. And so with that, with Virginia Beach, you do have Alex Askew coming back to the House of Delegates. You had that brutal race with Michael Fagan and Karen Greenlaw, where the voters spoke, and then, of course, Aaron Rouse, where his district, the district that he currently represents and was reelected, was drawn more in favor of Democrats. But also, right next door to Virginia Beach in Norfolk, we have 3 black women.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
3 black women who are representing the city of Norfolk. Senator-elect Angela Williams-Graves, right? And she is the senator for Norfolk. We have no other senators. Right. She's representing the entire city, which is last 35 years. We haven't had this. But also you have Delegate Jackie Glass, reelected, and then also new delegate Benita Anthony,
who's awesome,
who is representing Norfolk State as part of that district, but also representing. And then you mentioned Phil Hernandez, but when you talk about African American representation, that speaks volumes. Especially you talk about 2023 moving into 2024, that's huge. And then of course Portsmouth, with
and Hampton too,
Hampton, and then again City Hampton. So really the peninsula, really the South Side. That really speaks volumes to where Virginians believe who can lead, who speaks to their issues and lead the state in good common sense policy. So
757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Sandy joins us from Portsmouth. Hi, Sandy. You're on the air.
Well, thank you so much, Barbara, for my call. I want to make a comment on a couple of the races. I thought we were back with Lee Atwater running the Republican campaign, scare old white people. There was Clinton Jenkins and Nadarius Clark. Clinton was running for a Senate seat. He was already an elected delegate, but he opted to run for the open Senate seat. I believe it was the 19th. And Nadarius Clark is also a representative. I don't know whether he held on to his seat, but Clint lost. And it was, portraying them as criminals. Actually, I think the ads were so egregiously false that I can't understand why there's not a suit about it. And I think in the future, we've got to find a way to make radio stations and television stations, the broadcast media, vet some of these ads. They say it's not our responsibility, and they bought ad space. But it seems to me that it was one of the worst things I've ever seen, and I was just so ashamed that that's what they were doing in order to retain one seat and perhaps to gain another. And it even, I'm sure, kind of spilled over to Clint's wife, who was running for his old rep seat. Her name, Karen Jenkins. She did a really good showing. She almost won. But, people have a tendency for women candidates to assign their husband's behavior to them more than they would ever do a man, his wife's behavior. And I was just so ashamed that the issues were never really addressed, that it was just, I call it what Lee Atwater did. If you can scare people and make them afraid, they'll go your way.
Thanks, Sandy, for the call. We appreciate that. That Clint ad, it went back to 2004, something that happened in 2004 that was dismissed. And it really jumped out to a lot of people in terms of the fairness of being able to do that. Carol.
Well, you all are bringing something out that I have been asking myself. Do people really take ads seriously? Because I look at it as something that's being paid for, and they're paying for it. So if I'm paying for an ad for myself, I'm going to make myself brilliant. That doesn't mean that that's the truth. So I think most people would look at an ad and say, oh, it's just an ad.
I don't know, Eric. What do you think?
Carol, to your point, they do take those serious.
They do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was in a barbershop before the election. You know, we were talking about the election, and then of course, other conversations I'm having in the public, and people are, I'm asking, are you guys going to go vote? You know, who you voting for? Things of that nature. And they're like, well, we don't know who to vote for. We don't know who to trust. I say, why? I say, well, the ad says this. The ad says this. And we take it for granted that we're in spaces and places where we know what the truth is, and we know where the embellishment is, right? And we know where the falsehoods are. We also take for granted, Carol, you and I, where we're in a place of intellectual stimulation where we can, not just search, but we write these things. That the public is not. So those ads, which are millions of dollars, by the way, millions. So yes, they're going to the college part. They're going to take those ads, but they spend millions of dollars on those ads to push a narrative on both sides across the board in order to vote a certain way or think a certain way. So yes, it's going to happen. Yes, those ads do have influence, and what do we go from there?
Hang on, Carol. Go ahead, Gaylene.
And the repetition. That's what he said, the millions of dollars being spent. When you see something over and over and over again, then you start believing it because you start seeing it over and again. And then they will show documents that will back up what they're saying as well.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I think that too has something to do with how the Republican Party has been moving, because they're moving and following a lie. That's my opinion, but facts. They're following that lie, and they keep on. It's going to be so hard to bring them back to what is really the truth. For me, that means, too, that helps that process of moving toward fascism, dictatorship. That when you begin to, you hear it, you believe it, you follow it, and then somebody takes control of your life. That's what I see in the Republican Party, that they're being controlled by a lie, but they keep following and don't know how to pull themselves back. And pulling yourself back is a hard thing, and that's why the 2/3 of the country that are trying to maintain our democracy are vital, and putting that coalition together for, we're never going to always agree on everything, but pulling that coalition together is what's going to keep our country a democracy. And for me, that's where my mind is. But those ads are just meant to sway your thinking and your vote, or not voting, because they look so hard.
I understand that, but even if it's an ad that I agree with, I'm checking it out. If someone says, I support such and such, okay, let me go look and find
Carol,
but you're a professor.
Most people,
that's you, Carol.
Most people don't take the time to do that.
And most people don't look at television anymore. The young people, they're in their phones, and then if they do, it's like, I ain't dealing with that. Look at them fools sitting up there, all these ads. That's what they think, because I'm talking to them.
Even though Phil Hernandez had an excellent ad on those tweets.
Yes, he did. I think that was the cream of the crop of all of the ads. Phil did a good one with that.
757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Lynn joins us from Chesapeake. Hi, Lynn. You're on the air.
Hi, I don't remember the lady's name who is the history professor.
Carol.
Carol. She had said that she gave the advice to her students to start small and on the smaller elections and work their way up. And I think that's the gist of what she was saying. And I just wanted to agree with that, because I used to work in politics, and there was an old saying that whoever controls the courthouse controls the White House.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the call.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. So I have this question. Governor Youngkin and the Republican Party was pushing the 15-week ban. And Eric, where do you think Virginia is going to go in terms of moving the abortion rights legislation forward?
Well, again, I think Virginia has spoken just like Kentucky, Ohio spoke, and all other states, is that women care very, very, they care about this issue a lot, and they just don't want any restrictions. And here's the here's the I would say when we talk about influence, the wording is very important because it wasn't a 15-week ban. Anytime you say banned, right?
Yeah,
you're right. You're right.
Because it becomes an oxymoron, right? Because you can't have something that you can have, but then you stop it. That's not a ban, right? So a ban is you can't have it at all. So the wordplay was very strategic, and it got people, antennas up. But to your point again, I think that the women that care about this issue and others, they don't want any restrictions on that. So basically, it goes back to Roe versus Wade, what the Supreme Court had, which will be part of the law in these states, if not enshrined in the Constitution. I think Ohio showed, hey, you can put this in your Constitution. So I think that's what's going to come next.
So you think that'll happen here in Virginia?
Only if
I
it's
think-
full
I think
Democratic
so.
control.
I think that it's got to be an amendment. So the amendment has to pass 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Senator Locke is going to bring back the voter restoration rights bill for the voting rights bill to be an amendment. It has to be voted in 2 years in a row, and then you have to have an election, and then it's on the ballot after that. So it's work. But I think we can get it for the next 2 years.
But just what you just said, though, to your point, Carol, about people, about how you would question things. Listen how complicated our system is in terms of getting things done. And the average person at home, I mean, really, do they know that it has to come up as an amendment twice before it can be put on the ballot?
And you got to go speak at the subcommittee meetings, and you need to go to the committee meetings, to a general assembly.
But Barbara, to Gaylene's point, that process, just like I talked about the veto process and how laws come into effect, is good for democracy because of the checks and balances. But also from a political strategy standpoint, what do you have to run on moving forward? All right, so now you have this issue where you wrote the legislative body into your advantage. So now for 2 more years, you can ride the same issue into the White House, galvanize states running. You can ride the same issue into the gubernatorial election in 2025.
That's true.
And then you can run the same issue in 2026 when you have a U.S. Senate election. And what happens is, that's why, like I said, if I was advising Governor Youngkin, I would say, hey, try 2026, but really you want to look at 2028 because now you are branded with this stance that you have. It's hard to peel yourself back from it. That was a political misstep. And that's why you saw the Republican ads saying, no, it's not a ban, it's not a ban. But it really fell flat because it was too late. The Democrats were really good at making sure that stuck. Because once you get that in your mind over and over again, repetition, you can't pull that back. So now you just got to wait till it's, enshrined in the Constitution. It's going to come up on the ballot. 2026 is going to come up. So now what you do is that you let that pretty much play out. It becomes a non-issue anymore, and you start running on 2028, right?
Eric, I know you were saying that you're going to be meeting with VPAP and so forth next week, I believe.
Yes.
Or this weekend.
Yeah, we're going to be at the Maine.
Do we know yet who was behind, who pushed this election in terms of, was it suburban women? Was it African Americans? Do we know that yet, or is it still too early to tell?
Still too early. We're delving into the numbers to find out where the vote was. But I can say that when you look at early voting numbers, especially in the Danny Diggs, Monty Mason Senate race, when you look at that race, like I said, Republicans outperformed in those areas, Poquoson, Yorktown, and other areas. In the Williamsburg and also Newport News area on the top of the peninsula where that district is, there was an underperformance that was there. And again, it's because of voter apathy, but also messaging. Messaging is very narrow. So how do you get those voters out? And we know that women played a major part in this election as well. So we'll see where the exact numbers are in about a week or so. But right now, the analysis shows that women outperform, that how men did not perform as well, and then African American voters did not perform as high in certain areas. That again, because races were not competitive, there was nothing on the ballot, right? Where I voted, there was literally no one contesting the 2 individuals on the ballot. I still voted, but there was no one on the ballot contesting. You could write in somebody, but but other than that, how do you get those voters to the polls?
And that's the key. Let's talk to Josh, in Norfolk. Hi, Josh. You're on the air.
Hey, Barbara. How you doing? I appreciate you taking my call.
Sure. Go ahead.
So you guys were talking a couple minutes ago about the sort of likelihood or the potential for people to believe what's in advertising, obviously specific to politics, political advertising, vice not, and taking them at face value and objective as just being paid ads. And I think what's interesting, as an independent producer of podcasts, and I have a talk radio show on AM as well, one thing that I've found in putting ads together is a lot of people don't necessarily care enough to do the research. And I think I heard you make a similar point also just recently that what gets put out, I think the ownership, the agency, the responsibility, even the moral sort of ethics behind what we're putting in advertising has to come to the advertisers, has to come to the podcasters, has to come, like in your case, to the radio show hosts, because it's incumbent on us to deliver that. There's a mutual trust in what people are hearing and what we are delivering. And so I think for that reason, there's a little bit more of a willingness to not do the research and take it at face value than just advertising. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts?
Okay, I'm going to talk to the round table. Thanks, Josh, for that. Who wants to take that on? Gaylene?
And that's true. People are busy. You look at social determinants of health in the Black community and the underserved community. People are busy. They're trying to live. They go to work. So when they see on TV and see it over and over and over again, and then they already don't know who to vote for. That's the name that keeps coming up. That's why the number one rule is that a candidate should never mention his opponent's name.
I saw some of those ads. I was like, what are they doing?
Why you mention your opponent's name? But they see it over and over again. Then they talk to their friends about it, and in this particular election, I think that the Republicans, they were, like we said, they were on YouTube. They were doing Google Analytics. They were in different places all the time putting that message out. However, as to Eric's point about the 15-week ban, because we were saying a ban is a ban. So every time they said that, we said a ban is a ban. And so that resonated with people. But when you knocked on doors and talked to people at doors, that was the number one issue in Republican districts, in the independents, and if you went to the Dem areas, that was the number one issue. And you even had Republican women that said, I don't agree with abortions, but I don't think that we should tell another woman how to do with their body. They even said it, and they said it on television. So that's a big issue.
So I have a question. That the ad that was done that was explaining the 15-week
too much.
Okay,
It's too much.
It fell flat.
But I want to know who is the lady at the end of the ad, the picture. They never name who it is.
Scary.
Who is that?
Scary.
Oh, I don't know who she was.
No.
Scary.
Scary. Nobody knew.
Scary.
And nobody really cared.
I just remember seeing the ad and I thought it was just so strange.
Right. And that's the
there
governor's
was no
pack.
name.
It's the governor's pack, though. That's the governor's pack.
They put it out.
Yeah.
And I was like, who is she?
Who is she?
Okay, so we've had all these
I love it.
we've had all of these polls that have come out. CNN, I think, has the latest poll. They all say if the presidential election were held today, that Donald Trump would be president. I got to look to you, Eric, because you were the one who predicted Mr. Trump winning way back in 2016. What happened in Virginia? Does that portend what may happen in 2024?
Well, I say it should if the election was really, today, right? Now, again, I know what the CNN poll says. However, I think what will end up happening is that once you see all these convictions, once you see these trials start turning into convictions, will he be able to maintain that support? But I will say that right now, he's polling extremely high with his party, right? It is the MAGA party. We see congresspersons Ken Buck for being one who are leaving Congress because of the power and influence that the MAGA party have in Congress, okay? Mm-hmm. And with that, when you talk about support, these individuals, they're going to go, they see this, and to the caller's first point, talk about the Lee Atwater Southern strategy is what she was referencing. They see this as their last opportunity to, quote unquote, keep the country that they have. So you're going to see voters really outperform because they're going to get to the polls and vote. On the other side, the Biden administration really, and Democrats as a whole, really don't take the opportunity to really talk about their successes, talk and really go after the strife within the Republican Party. For 1 month, I would have had ads running across the country when they had the infighting. Day 1, day 2, they can't. Just you got to plaster. You got to take advantage. You're not going to get that opportunity again, because now that stays in the minds of the people. But they missed that opportunity. And then also you have a candidate. You also have a sitting president that also was not able to deliver on some of those issues, such as student loan forgiveness. So voter apathy could be an issue with key voters. And I keep focusing on African-American voters because African-American voters, especially African-American men, are saying what's in it for us, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, good policies and right policies are being implemented, for all other demographic groups. But black men are saying, and men in general, saying, where are we in the Democratic Party? So you fear that group not really coming out the way that they should. So right now, when we talk about the election, Donald Trump those numbers are true. Those numbers are true because of the way that, again, things are happening in individual states. But I think when it comes down to it, when it comes down to the election itself, and do we want fascism? Do we want another J6? I think the voters will say no, and I think the Democratic candidate, which is the sitting president, will be reelected.
Gaylene, do we start today
Yeah.
to get people ready to go to the polls?
Yeah, we should have been starting last year, 2017, really. But yes, I think that we start today with the messaging. There's tools out there now where you can get the facts. And at the end of this election, you notice Biden's and his pack came out and they talked about all the successes. One thing I found very interesting is that Youngkin broke out with his campaign vest and came out vote Republican, and then Biden came out with all of his successes as well, say vote Democrat. And I thought that was really interesting because usually you don't see that. You just see the candidates and whatever. So now it's really going to be based on issues. The culture war has to go. It's got to be on issues right now that pertain to the kitchen table and make people move. So the messaging starts now.
Guess what, y'all? We are out of time.
Oh, we got more to say.
Just that quickly, we are out of time. So thank you, Daun Hester, Gaylene Kanoyton, Dr. Eric Claville, and Carol Pretlow for joining me today to talk about this. And I know, can you believe it? And thank you for spending the past hour with us. And we hope that you've gained some perspective on why every election matters and why it's so important to be civically engaged. Now, you can listen to this show again by downloading our podcast at anotherviewradio.org. And you can also sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. Next week on Another View, Dr. Alvian Lyons will be joining me on managing difficult family relationships during the holidays. Alvian couldn't be with us today because she is helping to celebrate her dad's I think she said 80th birthday, and the entire family is coming together. And she said it's been years since they've all come together. So we miss you, Alvin, but we'll see you next week. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer. And Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Stay safe, everyone, and let's get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.